Roll Tide, everyone, and welcome to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Thompson Tractor. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by Kennedy Chase. And Kennedy, roll Tide. How's everything going for you?
It's going great. I'm happy to be here filling in for Kira.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you here, and we're glad to have football on the way because despite having their game canceled at LSU and not playing this past week, the Alabama Crimson Tide football team picked up another first-place vote in the Associated Press rankings. The Tide had 59 last week, and this week they took one from Notre Dame, as Alabama sits at 60, with Notre Dame and Ohio State each having one first-place vote.
The rest of the top 8 remain the same this week. Texas A&M at 5, with Florida at 6. Georgia fell 1 spot to 13, and the Auburn Tigers moved up 1 to 23. Guess what, Roger? It's game week finally for the Crimson Tide.
It certainly is. After not playing for 2 weeks, the #1 ranked Crimson Tide return to action this week as Alabama hosts Kentucky. For a preview of this week's matchup, we'll toss it over to our Christopher England. Christopher?
To preview this week's matchup between #1 Alabama and the Kentucky Wildcats, I'm joined by former Alabama offensive lineman and current ESPN analyst Barrett Jones. Barrett, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
What's up, Chris? How are we doing? Thanks for having me on, man. Looking forward to getting a chance to call a game this weekend.
Yes, sir. Man, doing well, and I appreciate you coming on. It should be a good one. This has been a pretty one-sided series with Alabama holding a 37-2 with one tie advantage over Kentucky all time. But however, this isn't the same Wildcats team as in past years. Mark Stoops has really improved the program there in Lexington. Now, as you said, you're going to be calling the game for ESPN Radio this Saturday. What are your overall thoughts on the Wildcats?
Well, first of all, Chris, you have a whole different mentality as a broadcaster, and so. I guess I'm probably secretly rooting for Alabama, but my #1 rooting is for a good game just because it's more fun to call a game. I'm not so sure after watching the tape. I do think that Kentucky's gotten better. I think their defense continues to improve, and they actually have a pretty decent unit over there. But after watching the tape, I don't think it's any secret that they're pretty overmatched, and I do think that some of their defensive statistics might be a little bit more of a product of who they've played so far. Still have Alabama and Florida left on the schedule, both two high-powered passing offenses. And look, the reality of college football in 2020, and if you're an old-school football fan, you might not like it, but even Nick Saban has embraced the fact that if you don't have a high-powered passing offense, you're probably not going to be elite. And as a lineman, it almost hurts me to say that, but those are the facts of life. And Terry Wilson, he's a good, solid player, but it's just not a very high-powered, explosive offense. I think they might struggle a little bit on Saturday because of that.
Well, since the second half against Georgia, the Alabama defense has only given up 17 points in 10 quarters of play. If my math is correct, and it's a lot better than my English, I promise you, Barrett, the Crimson Tide defense is allowing just 1.7 points per quarter over that span. What do you think has changed, and how do you see them matching up against that Kentucky offense that's averaging just 23 points per game? And as you mentioned, with Terry Wilson, he's back. He was back last week against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, for me, I think it really all started after the Ole Miss game, just a half before that. I think, obviously, they got embarrassed. I called that game as well, and just the tempo, they were totally out of sorts. Guys were, not lined up. The communication was terrible. And since then, it seems like there's been a real refocus for those guys. Look, some of it, too, is some of the teams they played, it's helped them get locked in. Again, Georgia, as we've seen, is not a very explosive offense, and they were a little maybe more explosive then. They've gotten less explosive because of some of the guys they've lost. So that's part of it. I don't think all the problems, just are magically gone, but I do think that some of those younger guys that have been playing some key roles are continuing to get a little bit older, continuing to mature. I think the secondary has continued to get better.
On defense, the Wildcats have shown glimpses of being pretty good. They held Mississippi State to 2 points, Tennessee to just 7, Georgia to 14, but they have had some injuries up front on the defensive line, and we know Matt Jones is going to throw the ball a lot and very well. Alabama has the #1 pass offense in the SEC, but on the other side, the Wildcats have the #1 pass defense in the conference. Is this a good setup for Najee Harris and the Alabama running game to have a big day?
Well, first of all, the running game has continued to improve. I think that's one thing people need to realize and think about. Really, all across the country, running games have kind of lagged behind. And I think a big part of that was just the coronavirus, the amount of practice, the amount of contact. I mean, the way you fit up blocks to the line of scrimmage, those things just take time and repetitions to get good at. and to really gel as units. And so I've seen kind of a wave all across the country of running games getting better as the season's gone on, because again, usually you get those repetitions in fall camp and even in spring that a lot of these guys didn't get. So I think the running game for Alabama has improved and will continue to improve. To be honest with you, though, Chris, I think Alabama has the best offense in the country. And when you're as good as they are, you really honestly don't let the opponent dictate too much of what you do. You kind of just play your game. And that's a good luxury to have, because a lot of people don't have that. But there's not really any defense in my mind in the entire country. And I still think Georgia, when they were healthy, is just about as good as anyone in the country on defense with some of the secondary players they have. It's really hard to match up against the kind of players that Alabama has.
Well, Barrett, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a great week and really enjoy calling the game. Hope to talk with you again soon. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Christopher. Looking forward to the game, and we now have a time for next week's Iron Bowl.
Yes, Kennedy, we do. Alabama and Auburn will face off in the 85th edition of the Iron Bowl next Saturday at 2:30 on CBS. That'll be here inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Back to that traditional time slot for the nation's best rivalry.
Oh, I can't wait. Thanksgiving on Thursday, the Iron Bowl on Saturday. That's a good week.
It will be a good week because guess what, Kennedy? It's also the start of basketball season as well.
Alabama men's and women's basketball begin their season next week. When we return, we'll chat with men's head coach Nate Oates about the upcoming season.
TideTV This Week, presented by Thompson Tractor, the exclusive provider of Caterpillar heavy equipment and genuine Cat parts for Alabama and Northwest Florida. Visit ThompsonTractor.com for more information. The University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
Welcome back. The Alabama men's basketball team begin their season next week here at home. Nate Oates and the Tide will welcome another in-state team to Tuscaloosa for the season opener. Alabama
will host Jacksonville State next Wednesday night inside Coleman Coliseum. For a preview of that matchup and more about the Tide's big signing class, let's once again welcome our Christopher England back. Christopher?
I'm joined by Alabama men's basketball head coach Nate Oates. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Coach, you recently signed a big class for the early signing period of 3 players that total ranked 10th in the nation, headlined by the #1 point guard and the #2 JUCO player in the nation. Can you tell me a little bit about your class and how you feel like they fit into your system?
We're really excited. Obviously, J.D. Davidson, the #1 point guard in the country. You're talking about a kid right from here in Alabama. He's been up to visit us. Had him on an official visit his junior year. We've been down there to see him. He's super dynamic. It's a priority for us to keep the best players in the state of Alabama. I think he's the highest rated kid nationally since DeMarcus Cousins out of Alabama. Kid Jason Holt out of Atlanta is a shooter, tough, athletic, guards, plays both sides of the ball, which is what we're looking for. And, I think he kind of helped replace Petty. Obviously, Petty's a senior and he'll be a freshman, so I'm not sure he'll be quite that good right out of the gate, but we think he's got a chance to, be that type of player down the road, and we're super excited about Jason too. And then Langston's a really, really good athlete, a little bit raw. He's only played 1 year of organized basketball, but his athleticism and his kind of raw ability, you just don't see that often. I mean, with his length and athleticism and what he's able to do on the floor, we're super excited about getting him in as well.
Well, Coach, you've been practicing for a few weeks now, only a couple of practices left before you start the season. Can you tell me what you've seen from your team so far as you get ready for the season?
Yeah, I think we've got some hungry guys. We've got 4 seniors. 3 of them have been here for 3 years. Petty and Herb took their names out of draft, come back. Those 2 and Reese have been here. I think they've got some leadership. You had a kid, Jordan Bruner, in who's in his 5th year at college and has had, really successful years at Yale. Done really well. You kind of put those 4 in with, Shaq played. We've got the 2 leading returning scorers in the SEC in Shackelford and Petty. So kind of got that group of 5. And then you had a kid like Quinterly in that's one of the best point guards in the country in high school. And I think he's really motivated to play. And Rojas was first-team All-American JUCO kid. Keon Ellis was one of the best JUCO players in the country last year. We've got, while we only have 4 returners that have played games here, I think we've got a really good group of really experienced college basketball players, if you will. So a little bit different that way, but I think our depth's great. The freshmen, Primo's been looking good. Keon Ambrose energy's great. Darius Miles can be good for us. You know, when you add in the college players that return, the college players that have played elsewhere, and then the freshmen, we've got some real depth that we didn't have here last year.
Well, Coach, I know you're excited. The season is almost here. You host Jacksonville State on Wednesday, November 25th, and then it's off to North Carolina for the Maui Invitational. I'm sure you'd rather be in Hawaii for that one. No disrespect to North Carolina, but can you talk about that season opener against Jacksonville State and the non-conference schedule as a whole? It looks like it's a pretty challenging non-conference slate.
Yeah, it's very challenging. So we've got 9 non-conference games. 8 of them come before, because we've got the Oklahoma game during the middle of a conference play. So 4 of those 8 games are in the first 8 days of the season. You know, we got Jacksonville State, who's one of the hardest playing, toughest teams in the country. You know, Coach Harper does a great job. They've got 7-foot transfer from North Carolina at the center. They've got a 4-man that started as a freshman at Georgia. They've got returning players. They're good. I mean, and they play hard. And so we've got a great opener, and then we play the 3 games in Asheville. And yes, you're right. We'd much rather be playing in Maui, but shoot, at this stage, I'd just rather play them anywhere. So, you know, we get 4 games in the first 8 days, and then the next 4 games aren't that easy either. You know, we've got Clemson and Atlanta. We've got Furman, who's picked to win their league, and shoot, they took Auburn to overtime. I had Auburn last year. Then we've got Houston, one of the top 20 teams in the country at our place. And then we've got East Tennessee State, who's been one of the best mid-majors over the last 5 years in the country. So really tough non-conference slate, really tough first 8 days out of the gate. But we're looking forward to it. We're sick of playing against each other in practice every day, and we're ready to play somebody else.
Well, Coach, I know you are. I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, and good luck on the season and next Wednesday for the season opener.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Stay with us. We'll have our NFL Players of the Week and more coming up next on Tide TV This Week.
Tide TV This Week, presented by Thompson Tractor, the exclusive provider of Caterpillar heavy equipment and genuine cat parts for Alabama and Northwest Florida. Visit ThompsonTractor.com for more information. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide. The University of Alabama, where legends are made.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Thompson Tractor. It was a good week to be an Alabama running back in the NFL. The Tide had 4 former running backs gain over 100 yards this past week, as well as some big defensive performances.
Let's take a look at our Crimson Tide in the NFL Players of the Week. They're brought to you by BBVA. Now, Roger, did you see that crazy Hail Mary touchdown pass for the Arizona Cardinals in their win over the Buffalo Bills? With just 4 minutes and 38 seconds left of the game, Drake Kirkpatrick helped put them in position to win as he came up with a huge interception. Anytime you can take the ball away from a high-scoring offense, that's a big play.
It was a crazy ending there, and as we mentioned, the Tide had 4 running backs go over 100 yards this past week, and we honor one with the most this week. That's Damian Harris of the New England Patriots. He rushed for 121 yards on 22 carries. Harris's career night helped lead the Patriots to an upset win over the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. And also, he may not play football, but Justin Thomas had an outstanding weekend. Thomas earned his best ever finish at the Masters with 12 under par total. That earned him a 4th place finish and $552,000. Not a bad way to spend the weekend. Roll Tide to Justin Thomas. He'll get that green jacket eventually.
Yes, Roll Tide, and also congratulations to Kyra Lewis Jr. He was drafted 13th overall in the NBA draft for the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll have more on Kyra's big night next week.
The Alabama women's soccer team wrapped up their fall season at the SEC tournament in Orange Beach, Alabama. Playing against LSU in the opening round of the SEC tournament, Alabama fired off a season-high 21 shots, but none of them could find the back of the net. LSU scored twice, with both goals coming from Taylor Dobles, as LSU defeated Alabama 2-0.
I thought we played well, that we created a ton of chances, but LSU's a dangerous team. For a team that hadn't won any games and seeded 14 in the tournament, I mean, that's a damn good 14-seed team. And you got some dangerous players, and they played their tails off, and hats off to them. It felt my group. We worked hard, we played hard, did well, but at the end of the night, we just weren't good enough.
The Alabama volleyball team wrapped up their fall season this past week as the Tide hosted LSU for 2 matches.
The Crimson Tide turned in its best performance of the year in Game 1, rallying from a 25-21 loss in the first set to win the next 3 for a 4-set win over the Tigers. Alabama's .310 hitting percentage was a season high. The Tide also had season highs with 65 kills and 61 digs.
After setting season highs the previous day in the win over the Tigers, the Tide struggled offensively in match 2. LSU won 3 consecutive sets for the victory.
So, we've already visited with men's basketball head coach Nate Oates. When we return, we'll check in with women's head coach Christy Curry as they begin their season on Wednesday as well.
Welcome back. Basketball season is only a few days away. We previewed the men's basketball season earlier. Now let's take a look at the upcoming season for the Alabama women's basketball team. And for that, I toss it over to Kennedy.
It's almost basketball season for the Crimson Tide, which means Alabama women's basketball is right around the corner. And who better to talk about this upcoming season with none other than head women's basketball coach Christy Curry. Hi, Coach. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you've been practicing for about a month. What have you seen from the team this year that you haven't seen before, and who are the players to watch this season?
Well, we've been really fortunate because we've been here since June with our returnees, and then everyone came in July, so we've been hard at it. You know, we're 26 official practices in, and really love where our team is at and how hard they're working. The chemistry, the culture, the togetherness, just their effort every day has been phenomenal through a very challenging time as we're all faced with right now.
So you just signed 2 new team members in the early signing period, Kayla Blackshear and Taylor Cullinan. What do you expect them to bring to the team next season?
Well, I expect them both to be big impacts for us. They bring size, they bring a tremendous resume from their high school and summer programs, and both will be impact players, not only on the court for this program, but with our culture. They're tremendous young women who their academics are very important to them as well as the basketball. So they're the complete package. We're really excited to have them join our family.
We're excited to see them next season. Now, your home opening matchup against Samford is November 25th. How do you think the non-conference games coming up will prepare the team for the conference matchups later in the season?
Well, I know we're just excited to see a different color jersey. Obviously competing crimson versus white every day, and then we have our practice players that come for 3 days a week. We're ready to see a different face. And so we're just anxious for the opportunity to kick the season off. I think preseason games are really important because they give us an opportunity to see and measure where we are against real competition as we head into conference play. So any competition that can prepare you for the SEC is really going to matter, and we're excited about Samford on the 25th at noon.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Coach, and good luck on the season. Roll Tide.
Thanks so much for having us. Roll Tide.
Stay with us on TideTV this week. We'll have our plays and players of the week coming up next.
So many long athletic rallies in this
Welcome back. Those are our ATI Plays of the Week. Now let's take a look at our Players of the Week, brought to you by Payless Drugs.
Kennedy McElroy tied teammate Aaliyah Wells with a game high of 17 kills, hitting .455 in volleyball's win over LSU. McElroy was also a force at the service line, tying her season high with 4 aces.
And Mercy Chalangot was named Alabama's first ever SEC Women's Runner of the Year. Last month, Chalangot captured the individual women's title at the SEC Championships as she led the Crimson Tide to a runner-up finish. It was the program's best conference finish since the year 1994. Congratulations to Mercy Chalangot.
And those are our Payless Drugs Players of the Week.
Kennedy, you've done a great job. We enjoyed having you with us this week on TideTV This Week.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Thanks for watching. We hope to see you right back here next week. Roll Tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield IMG College.